I enjoyed your questions last time. So I think what we're going to try and do for the talk, I figured that I would have a few points I'd like to share with you guys, but then I'm going to try and keep it relatively brief, and then you guys can maybe ask some questions, or if you want to hear more about a particular thing, that way I'm not just kind of like, dumping what you don't need and kind of giving you more maybe what you want. Does that sound reasonable? Yeah, cool. Okay, so I kind of have these three main points to share with you guys, and the first one is wherever you go, whatever you're doing, whether it's school, work, whatever, keep practicing your faith, no matter what. Which sounds like, okay, no, you're supposed to tell us how. I'm like, no, the actual things that you're supposed to do for your faith, like going to Mass, going to confession, keeping up some kind of daily prayer life, you must keep doing those. If you start letting those things slide, that's kind of the start of the downhill slope. It can be really, really easy. I know all of you guys, or most of you guys are in college. A lot of you guys are in high school. You guys have busy lives. You know how crazy it can get. And if you start saying, well, I'll give this up this one time and do this thing. It'll be fine. It'll be okay. That starts to become a habit, right? So I think Aristotle defines virtue as habit in a lot of ways, like the habit of doing something that is good. And so in order to maintain that virtue, we can then say, like, let's keep doing these things that are known to be good. So keep practicing the faith. I guess what that looks like to me, as I was saying, is go to church every Sunday, meet your minimum obligation, right? Say about 15, 20 minutes of mental prayer every day, something similar to like what you would do in adoration. You don't necessarily need to be in front of our Lord, but doing something like that includes some kind of thanksgiving, some gratitude to God, a way to maybe intercede for your friends and your family, and then to, of course, to speak with Him as a friend and a father. I think those three elements of your daily prayer are very, very important. So of course you also want to go to confession once a month, every 2 weeks, something like that. And of course if you have a mortal sin situation going on, you want to go as soon as you possibly can. You don't want to sit around with that going on. So not necessarily required, and it might be hard given some of your schedules, especially with school, because like it's like crazy sometimes. I would recommend adoration, like in the middle of the week. It's a good kind of bridging point, so it doesn't feel like all of your formal like church things are just for the weekend or just for Sunday. That way you're kind of spreading this out through the week, and you're able to kind of integrate that with the rest of your schedule. And it kind of gets you used to working around it for the rest of your life too. Like, this is going to be present, this is going to be here, and I'm already going to create time for it now. So keep practicing faith, point one, right? Number two, I think this is probably next to actually like receiving our Lord and things. This is probably going to be the next biggest thing that you guys will be dealing with, and that is to choose good friends and choose good environments. And I know I sound like your mom right now, like, make good choices, guys. But it's kind of true. Make good choices, guys. The people that you're around are going to help to form you, especially kind of in our school time, where we're building our habits, building our interests, as adults. Like, this is kind of the formative years for all of us. So choose friends that are going to enable you to do the things that you know that you need to do, that God wants you to do. Someone who always wants to be out on the weekend is kind of like, oh, why do you have to go to church? Like, not going to say just like throw them aside, but like maybe that's not your best friend. Maybe that's not going to be the core of your friend group. I mean, you want to be an example to people, but you also don't want to put yourself like in the middle of like a pack of lions, as it were, because like one of them is going to get you eventually. So you want to have people around you that are going to help you to build a virtuous life. That are going to help you to make good decisions, that are going to support your good decisions. And most importantly, they're going to slap you in the back of the head and say, dude, what are you doing when you make bad decisions? Because it's going to happen. Like, we're all going to mess up. And you want like one or two of these friends around you that are going to say, look, I love you, but what are you doing? I'm looking at this group that we have right here, right now. Like, you guys, I've seen some like really good groups of friends here as a whole, but also some individuals and some smaller groups. That's what you want. Like, these are the kind of people that you want around you that are going to encourage each other to pursue the virtue, right? The other part of this is not just like your actual friends, but the places that you go and the things that you're doing as you're free time activities, like what your extracurricular stuff. If you're going out and you're drinking a lot on the weekends, and you're going clubbing or dancing all the time, like all those things are not bad occasionally on your own, like in their. Sorry, let me start over again if I can actually speak here. Those things are all fine in moderation and with the right people. And then there are some places. I'm looking at some clubs in DC, for example, like you just don't ever want to go. Like you should never ever go there. Not because dancing or going out with your friends is bad, but because there are people who are going to spike your drink and try and get you drunk and do all these terrible things. Like it happens. It happens all the time. So realizing what kind of activities for you in general, or for maybe me personally, right, are bad, or a temptation, or are in general just a situation that's setting you up for failure, to recognize those and say, okay, these are on my kind of don't be a part of this list, right? You can always find a way to do the things that you want in a safe and healthy way with good people around you that are going to support you in that. So this is not saying don't do any of these things. This is saying find a group to do this with, and find the kind of things that are going to be positive for you as a group, right? So good friends, good environments, number 2, right? Number 3, I think this is one of the things that really helped me personally, was to continue finding some ways to actively learn about the faith and to deepen your relationship with God, okay? That's one thing that I've noticed a lot of people kind of like, they're like, okay, cool, I get confirmed, and then I just like go to church and like be Catholic and all that stuff, and they don't really take a particular emphasis on learning more, reading more, growing in some way, stretching yourself, finding out something you don't know about God or something you don't know about the faith, a new way to pray that might help you to deepen your personal relationship with God. This kind of stuff exposes you to the fullness of the faith, like what is all out there. The faith is a 2,000-year-long worldwide tradition that is so full and so beautiful that our little corner of experiencing this in the 20th and 21st centuries in the United States is like this much of it, and we want to be able to take advantage of all the great men and women who've come before us. We want to learn from the mistakes of the past. We want to be able to learn from the good things of the past, like what patterns and what social things we can take from the faith into the community and start implementing to help us live that faith better. This is all just really basic stuff. It sounds like, but this is really what's going to help you to stay with the faith, to stay in the faith, is by learning about it. You can't really like. I think I mentioned something like this in a group the other day, and I tried to write it down again. But if you learn about the faith, you'll be in a good position to love God. And the reason that you need to learn about the faith to love God is because you can't love something that you don't know. Okay? You can't love something that you don't know. You have to understand what it is. You have to understand how it functions, why it's here, and what the good is. If you don't know something, you can't pick any of those points out. So, if you want to love something, know it. Okay, I think this is an interesting point that relates a lot to Carla's talk last week. Is get to know people as people. That's what Father Mike Schmitz was saying. That's what Carla was saying. Understand their situation, and you'll be able to better love them and better help them. This is the same thing. If you get to know God, if you get to know your faith, you'll be able to love Him and your fellow brothers and sisters here on earth much better. And that's all that God asks us to do, is to love Him and to love each other and to try and get to heaven. That's what the church is here for. So if you know the church, it'll help you to learn to know God, to deepen your relationship with Him. So I think those are like my 3 main areas that you should focus on as you're stepping out your door, going out to school, going into the workforce after you leave Christendom or wherever you're going to school, outside of these nice environments that we have. They're wonderful and they're beautiful, but we're not always going to have them. So when you step out into these things, you have to know kind of like what to look for. I'm going to jump back to my old life for a second in the Army. Target acquisition was something that's really, really important, knowing what's a threat and what is not. These things are going to help you to know, what are the good things, like, where your friendly troops are, like the 5 guys over there. So if I go over here, we can crossfire, right? We can make something good happen there. Or you know where all the bad guys are. If they're flanking you, you need to be aware that, hey, this unit is not out to help me, right? Keep an eye on where that is and where you are relative to them. So again, these are all things, track them and factor them in. So these are my 3 points. I'm going to offer you guys a strategy, and then we'll kind of open this up. You guys can ask some particular questions, or maybe ask me to go back over stuff. I intentionally have kept this very, very brief. So I hope we get into more stuff. That was the purpose here. But the strategy that I stumbled into when I was in high school to make these kind of decisions is, again, deceptively simple, but I think it works very, very well. So what you need to do is, like, ahead of time, before you get into any given situation, to already have the answer, to already know the response that you're going to give to that situation. That way, when you're in the situation, you don't have to worry about making a decision when you're emotional, you're scared, you're confused, anything that this is going on. Those things are very conducive to poor decision making. When you're trying to think something through during one of those kind of times, you're just not going to make as good of a decision if you can sit down when you're in a good state of mind and rationally think something through. So one thing that I did is, in high school, I promised myself, okay, I am never going to take advantage of a woman, ever, in any situation. I decided that's how it was going to be, and thank God, through His grace, I've never been in a position where I've been seriously tempted to do that, because every time I've been in a position where that could have happened, in a relationship or anything like that, I already knew what the decision was. You did not have to make the decision, you just knew. This is what's going to happen in this situation. There was no question, nothing. So if you know it's a bad idea to go drinking with a certain group of people, you say, hey, I'm never going to drink in this environment or in this company. End of discussion. So that way, if it comes up, you find yourself in a position because of peer pressure. Like, everyone's like, hey man, like, yeah, come on, like, just one drink, it'll be fine, like, it's not going to be a big deal. You can be like, oh, well, yeah, like, they really want you there, it's flattering, it's nice, you want to be with them, you want to maybe be able to be an example for them, but it's not going to help if you put yourself in a position where you're going to ultimately have your own kind of problem, your own failure. And so you want to protect yourself, and you can do that by deciding ahead of time, what your responses are going to be for certain things. So how I would recommend doing that, you can do this in adoration. You don't have to be in adoration if you want, but you can sit down, write it down if it helps you. If it doesn't, no worries. I didn't write it down. But go through and say, okay, these are some of the things that I know that I'm supposed to do. Going to Mass, going to confession, daily prayer, things like that. And that I am going to promise God, with His grace and with using all of my own human fortitude that I can, that I will do everything I can to make these decisions whenever they come up, that this is going to be my response to these things. Similarly, if there are things that you know that you shouldn't be doing, then you say, okay, these are things that I know it's easy to get in trouble with in college life, in a job situation, in your family life, in a dating relationship. And you say, okay, I'm not going to do these things. And you say, Lord, with your grace, through my own fortitude here, please help me to do this. Help me to live for you. Promise yourself and promise Him. And then, again, hopefully when that situation arises, you don't have to think. You just know what your response is. So, all right. I think I'm going to leave that at my very brief 10-minute summary here. So, what do you guys want to hear more about? Do you have questions? Do you have thoughts? Yes?
Like, so when you left home and went into the Army, what were some of the specific challenges you may have faced in keeping the faith, and what kinds of practical things did you do, specifically?
Sure. In the military, there's a lot of really good things, and there's a lot of really bad things. Like, there's almost no middle things. They're either just really, really good, or the absolute worst, and you're going to hell. So, I think a lot of the good things were discipline was a big one, which can help you in these kind of decision-making processes, right? So the bad stuff is, like, there's a lot of smoking, there's a lot of drinking. People don't view relationships, in a very Christian manner. So you have all these guys and girls out there, just kind of like hookup culture is like the epitome of this. I can't tell you. It's like, think of like an office or coworker situation where everyone's like hooking up with everyone all the time. Like, that can be the military. It's really bad. That was a big challenge, is to isolate myself from these kind of social situations where this is happening all the time. And that's really, really hard, because you do end up isolating yourself to a degree. I think how I kind of met in the middle on staying away from these things, like, for example, when we were doing our pre-deployment training, we had a leave weekend. It's a 4-day weekend. All the guys in my squad were going out, and they were going to strip clubs. So guess what I said? No, right? So I went and I did other things kind of on my own or with a few other guys who didn't have plans. And it was great, but I stayed in touch with these guys all weekend. I told them, like, hey, look, I'll be your designated, like, driver guy. Let me know if you guys need a ride back. Call me up, do whatever. And I stayed in touch with the guys all the weekend. So you can say, hey, for this reason, I'm not going to join you guys, but I'm still willing and open to you in these other contexts that are positive. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, like, how did you find other people? Because, like, I know my tendency in those kinds of situations just to sort of be quiet and not necessarily get involved. So how did you find other people, like, if they're thinking the same thing, they're trying to lay low and stay quiet? Like, how did you find other like-minded people who are morally grounded?
Yeah. So in the military, they're kind of fairly few, unfortunately, like, at least in the sense that we would consider. But there's still a few of them out there. You're not going to like this, but you actually have to start talking about what you believe. Yeah. Yeah. So, again, like I was kind of in response to Paige's question as well, when these guys are like, hey, you want to go out? We're going to this club. I'm like, is it a strip club? And yeah. I'm like, okay, well, I'm Catholic. As much as I like to hang out with you guys, I can't buy into that right now. Maybe we can go do something tomorrow when you guys are done, like in the afternoon, grab lunch or go arcade or something like that, whatever we do on leave. So you can offer these alternatives. So it's not just rejecting them, but it's saying, no, I'll do this thing with you, but something that we can both kind of meet in the middle on. Showing that you're continuing to be open. It also gives you an opportunity to talk about why you don't want to do that, which is really, really important because, again, I think this is a good strategy. I think my small group for the discussion day for the LGBTQ stuff may have talked about this a little bit, but if you tell somebody no or you criticize somebody, they're going to take it personally unless you directly show them that it's not about them personally. So you have to make it about you. Does that make sense? So you would say, hey, I can't do this. I'm Catholic. I don't believe in that. I'm not judging you. You guys go do your thing if that's what you want to do. I'm going to go do this other thing. You can join me, or maybe I'll see you tomorrow for lunch. So there was a guy in my squad who, he was a complete idiot. I think he was like an armorer or something like that, so he like fixed guns and stuff like that. But then he decided he wanted to be in the infantry. And he went to this like fake, not real infantry certification school, which was a terrible decision because he was really bad at being in the infantry. But he was also Catholic, but like nominally Catholic. And I honestly am kind of embarrassed about how I handled the situation because I don't think I handled him not being a very good Catholic well. We started off like, he's like, oh, I'm Catholic too. And we start talking about things. I'm like, dude, you're not, like, do you actually believe these things? Like, he kind of had a very humanistic view of the church. So it's like, it's good for humans, but it's not as important exactly how we go about certain things. I had to look up the Council of Trent and show him where transubstantiation was a thing. Like, that's the level that this guy was at. Through our deployment, though, I didn't just like tune him out. I actually engaged in some of these conversations with him. Although I think I was very frustrated with him at times and maybe didn't always respond well, 5 years later, through the grace of God and maybe that opening conversations on those deployments, he was about to get married in extraordinary rate. Like this, like, you know, and that was me like being a terrible evangelist, guys. Like that was me just absolutely doing like the rock bottom tier of this. So again, like if you are open about what you believe, you're willing to have a conversation, and you're able to show that you're not being critical of them as a person or their lifestyle choice, I think that's the way to start talking about these things. So by the end of this deployment, like our squad, we operate as the same 9 guys doing all the same things for literally a year. We were pretty close, and these guys got a chance to know me well, and they were completely fine with me practicing my faith and what I believed, even if they didn't choose it themselves. But it's because we were willing to have conversations about it. So, yeah. Yes?
To go back to your second point about like surrounding yourself with good friends, what would you say about friends that, yes, are Catholic, but maybe don't practice it as much as they should, or aren't grounded in their faith?
Sure.
Because for me, like I would want to reach out to those people, spend more time with them, kind of try to help them, but at the same time, that could be dangerous for my situation. So what would you say?
Sure, yeah, I think you're right to be cautious going into that. Like, again, you don't want to compromise yourself by participating in certain things, but we are called to evangelize, every single one of us. And by doing that, that means interacting with people that don't believe in us. Some of them are going to be like the complete and total opposite of us. So I think, where your point comes in is you want to invite them to do things with you that you and your good friend group, would be doing, the things that are virtuous and building you up, that are part of your good Catholic lifestyle, right? So you want to invite them to those things. You want to participate in the things with them that you're able to do, without morally compromising yourself, right? And then just be the example in those situations. But that requires the discipline of being able to say no to certain things, and then the ability to explain why without offending them. So I think again it comes back to that really key thing is, again, the discipline of being able to recognize and then choose to do or not to do certain things, and then presenting that in a way that's more about you and not about their choices. So we believe that there's this absolute truth, there's right and wrong and all that stuff, and that's true. But if you go in with the attitude of like you're wrong, you're never going to convince anybody about anything, even if it's true. So.
So basically what I found is saying like, I'm not doing this because it makes me happy to not do it. And like I find solace and self-control and that sort of stuff is a great way to make it about me and not about like tearing them down. So
yeah,
I don't know if you have like a different method that you would go for, but I was just curious.
Yeah, I mean, so I think that's a good way. It's all kind of variations on themes like that. You just need to make, again, somehow, like you were saying, as long as it's kind of like about you and not a criticism of them. You can say, like, I don't like to do that because it makes me feel this way, or I don't want to comport myself in this way for whatever reason it is. And just, again, like steer it away from judging their actions and making like how it relates to you. And that's perfectly fine. Well, probably the only beneficial thing about our current climate is everyone has this like, you do you, man. So if you can make it about you, it's an easy way to like use their own weird worldview to like help you, make a good point, I guess. So also be ready to actually explain it the right way, though, because some people may not buy that.
No.
The actual smart atheist people will like gun for you. So yeah. So yes, sir.
What role would you say that solitude has in keeping the faith? Like, when would you find time to simply be alone? And during that time, what would you do with it?
Yeah, I mean, personally for me, I'm definitely an introvert. So I have to have time alone, otherwise I just like explode and my brain goes crazy. I'm just terrible. Anyway, so it's important to have that time, like particularly if you're that kind of personality. But solitude is the only place where we're really going to be able to hear God's voice. And so it's important for that reason. That's why adoration has really become what it is in the Catholic Church. Not only is it the presence of God, but it's an ambience of solitude and quiet and peace. And we need that to be able to listen. You know, it's like, you know, you try to have a conversation with someone at a party or in a bar or a club where there's lots of music going on, like you can't hear anything, you're not communicating with them well. Like half the time you barely even know when it's time to leave because, you know, everyone's like around and can't hear each other, and it's a mess. So that solitude will allow you to hear those conversations, to hear God. But you actually have to choose to spend your solitude in that way. You know, you can easily spend your solitude doing something that's maybe good, like reading or something like that. But if it's not spiritual reading, then you know you're not going to have as much of an opportunity for God to be speaking with you. If you're sitting there saying, "God, speak to me," that's the best way, right? Because you know, I could just sit down here on this bench over here by Kiara or David, and I could just sit there awkwardly for a while, and maybe we wouldn't say anything. But if I say, "Hey, David, how's it going?" David's probably going to say, "Oh, good, man. How are you?" Like most of the time. So, you know, Kiara too. That's, I guess, does that answer your question?
Yeah, got it.
Yeah? Okay. Yeah, so solitude is good because it refreshes you and it allows you an opportunity to really hear God. So there are other ways that God talks to us, but that's probably the primary one. So.
I was kind of talking with my brother about this a few months ago, but how you were saying about making decisions about certain situations before you're confronted with those situations.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about dating, and he was, like how you did that, you could. He was saying that, like, before you enter into a relationship, you should set certain standards. And, like, even just small things, like when you'll hold hands or when you'll start going out, just like, you with the guy and, I don't know, getting more, I don't know. But, so my question was kind of, if I was in a situation like that, I would kind of want to, talk about it with the guy I was in the situation with and see where he stood, and, so we could like work it out together.
Communication's good.
Yeah. So what would you say to do in that situation, like wanting to communicate with the person, but also having to like set yourself certain standards, I guess, before you
Sure.
go into a relationship?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the thing is setting certain standards for yourself without communicating is a really bad way to have a really good way to have bad misunderstandings, because they're gonna be wondering why you're doing these somewhat like random seeming things maybe if you don't communicate. So I think it's good to want to have the conversation. I think the one area that you want to be careful of initially about having this conversation is if you sit down and go, all right, we've been on 2 dates, let's plan our lives together. That's a little bit like, you're like, okay, wait, I'm out. Nope. So, that's you want to be careful not to do that. But I think it's reasonable. So, I'm a firm believer in after. You can pick whatever number you feel comfortable. Again, talking to whoever you're going out with is good. You go on a couple of dates. If it's like 2, 3, 4, you want to say, okay, where are we going with this? Like set the standard. Like, are we actually formally together or not? Like that's your first step. And if the answer is yes, cool, that's good. Then you're more in a position to like kind of have this conversation about how we're going to comport ourselves going forward and things like that. I would recommend kind of having that step taken care of before talking about some of these other things. Because if they haven't asked you formally to be the girlfriend or the boyfriend, whatever the situation is, then they probably shouldn't be holding your hand. They definitely shouldn't be kissing you. And the expectation level is like way too high, way too early. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of a little bit of a red flag. If someone's expecting these indications of a deeper level of commitment on like date 2 without kind of setting up whether we're going to kind of like make this a steady thing or not. So that would be my recommendation is like when you get to that point, have that conversation. Before that point, those other things, hopefully if it's a decent guy, should be kind of off the table until you have that conversation. Does that make sense? Anyone else? Okay. Okay.
I
actually reading right now, it's a really good one. It's actually pertinent to your question about silence. I always butcher his name. Cardinal Robert Sarah? Yeah, Sarah. Okay. He has a book called The Power of Silence, and it's an awesome, awesome book. Basically, he had a conversation with the guy who helped him write the book, and it's him being interviewed about his thoughts on silence and how it applies to the spiritual life, and also to regular life too. Like they're kind of united, spiritual life and your outside regular life. What affects one affects the other. So reading this book has been really good. I'm still not done with it because I realized when I started reading the book, you can't read it like an actual book. You have to read it. It's kind of divided up into these like big long paragraph meditations. So you can only read like one or two of these meditations at a time, at least for me, because I have trouble processing all of it. I start losing things. And so it's like that kind of more meditative stuff. So take this to like adoration or your quiet time, or you just want to sit and contemplate for a little bit. That's a really good book to use for that kind of thing. Another book that I liked a lot, many of you have probably heard, if not have read it yet, Mere Christianity, C.S. Lewis. That's an awesome book because basically it lays out, for those of you who aren't familiar, it lays out exactly how to reason into Christianity, which is fantastic. It shows the exact progression through natural law into why, assuming Jesus is God, and therefore what he says is valid. It's awesome. Love it. Would recommend it 100%. Very, very good. So I'll leave you with those two. I have more suggestions for you guys. I can give you those later if you want. So I saw a couple hands over here somewhere. So yeah.
Who is your favorite military saint?
Military saint? I think Saint Sebastian is. He's actually my confirmation saint. So for those of you not familiar with Saint Sebastian, he is a Roman soldier who I think it was in the second century maybe. It was still illegal to be a Christian in the Roman Empire at the time. So he was a military officer. Like it was a very big conflict there. So at some point, I think the emperor started going around like mass killing all of these Christians, and he decided to stand up and say, "Hey, this is wrong. You can't do that. Christianity is the best. Like go Jesus." And the emperor was like, "Oh, okay, kill him." And so they went and they tried to kill him a couple of times. I think they ended up. I can't remember what order it was, but they tried to drown him. They tried to behead him. They tried to drown him, then they tried to shoot him with arrows, and then they beheaded him finally. It took 3 tries. But it was kind of funny because after the drowning didn't really work, and they shot him with arrows, this nice old lady, like church ladies are the best guys, this nice old church lady, pulled all the arrows out and cleaned them up, and he healed up. And then Sebastian goes walking into Rome and is like, "Hey, emperor, what the heck, dude? Stop with the Christian killing," after he's supposed to be dead. So it was amazing. I kind of wanted to have that kind of courage in my life and a patron saint who could help me with that. So hopefully I don't get shot full of arrows and beheaded. I kind of don't want that, but if it comes up, I hope that Saint Sebastian can help me to endure as he did. So.
Do you, I know this is only for priests and stuff, but do you actually have a lot of friends who are couples who are getting ready for marriage? Do you talk a lot about it with them, and kind of just the journeys they've had with Kiara's questions, setting those boundaries and then kind of growing into them? Or?
Yeah, I've had a few conversations. A lot of my friends are almost married. There's only a couple of them right now that have actually done the deed. And one of them is an SSPX kind of thing. So they're good, they're solid, but also kind of gotta be careful. It's just interesting because I think Kiara's question was good. The particulars of how that plays out are going to be different for literally every single couple. Even the same individual, in a different dating relationship, will probably handle things differently because they're with a different person. So it's not, in big terms, you can apply this to everything. In smaller terms, the individual matters, just like your individual relationship with God matters. It's going to be different for everybody. It's going to be different with everybody. I mean, every single one of you here have multiple friends in this room, and your relationship with each one of them is slightly different, even though you're still friends, even though you still care about each other. You're just different individuals, and people mix different ways. The particular examples of how certain, one of them may be applicable to you, it might not, because you might be in a situation that doesn't require that particular thing. Who knows? Does that helpful?
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right. Did you have a hand up earlier, Lucy, or did we get your question?
It wasn't really a good question. I'll ask it later. Don't worry about it.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Yeah. Cool. Anyone else? Any last parting questions or criticisms, or are you ready for me to sit down and be quiet? Okay, I think on that note we'll be good then. Thank you so much, guys.